All right, let me just talk. I'm going to try to talk for about 10 minutes and not too much longer about the book, and then just open this up to, because a lot of the stuff that you want to hear about is more interesting than what I want to talk about. I wrote this book because first of all, because I think that we ought to have a health insurance system in this country that works, and we haven't had one ever. And secondly, because I thought there was a need for a book by somebody who understood healthcare, and it wasn't just me. This is co-authored by two young folks from Center for American Progress, Igor Volsky and Faiz Shakir, who are really our policy wonks. And what I wanted to do is translate this incredible wonkishness and difficulty in acronyms of this unbelievably complex problem to plain English. So what you have in front of you is about 140 some odd pages of this incredibly complicated industry. And well, we'll get to that in a minute. If you don't mind waiting your turn, there'll be plenty of time to discuss single payer. So what we wanted to do is just be able to lay out where we are and what our recommendations are in plain English. The other thing about this, which is really fun, and some of which the guys from CAP brought in, is there are sections in this book for how to refute all the lies that are busy being told by the Rush Limbaugh and Ann Coulter and the whack jobs that pass for the Republican Party these days. And well, it's true. I mean, Dave Durenberger, who was a wonderful Republican senator from Minnesota, retired, was in the audience last night in San Francisco when I was doing this. Now, if we'd had Republicans like that, we could actually come to a reasonable compromise. But there don't seem to be too many reasonable Republicans anymore. I don't know what's become of the Republican Party. So if you would like to participate in this, I would ask you to give me the courtesy in your audience who's taking their lunch hour and be quiet until the question period, okay? Then I will call on you. And if you wouldn't like to, we'd be very happy to get security to ask you to leave. So we wrote the book, A, to try to explain to average people who weren't steeped in the incredible intricacies of all this, and B, to try to get people to get active in terms of, and there's a lot of it, it's a how-to manual, how to get the Congress to do something. My view of, and the reason I took the job as Democratic Party chair was not, the end was not to elect a Democratic majority and a Democratic president. That's a very nice byproduct. The end was to bring real reform at all kinds to America. And I concluded a long time ago that you can't possibly do that with Republicans in office, not these Republicans. And so the only way you could do it was have a Democratic president, a Democratic House, and a Democratic Senate. But that is not a guarantee. That just gets you in the door, and now it's our job to hold the Democratic Party's feet to the fire and make sure they are actually reformers. I would like to, now, the core of this problem and the core of this issue is that the private health insurance has not served America well. It is much more expensive, it is much less efficient, and they are unconscionable in the way they behave. The majority of Americans, of primary care physicians in America today, favor single payer. That was not true 15 years ago. And the reason it is true today is not because Medicare has gotten better, it's because the private insurance industry has become so dreadful in persecuting its own patients and the doctors. It is unbelievable. There was a testimony 2 weeks ago in the House that talked about the biggest three insurers in the country, which kicked 20,000 people off their rolls who were dreadfully ill after they had been paying premiums for years by taking advantage of some stuff they deliberately put in for that purpose in fine print, and caused $300 million to flow to their bottom line. That is not health insurance. That is the same kind of stuff that went on in the banking community, which got our economy here it is, and we don't want it in health insurance, and it's time to put an end to that. And there are a lot of ways to put an end to it. One of the things I love about the president's plan, I think it's the smartest political plan I've seen. I've been doing this for 30 years. I started with Jake Javits and Ted Kennedy, following them around when I was a medical student, as they tried to get universal health care under Jimmy Carter. The thing I love about Obama's plan is it puts, for the first time, ordinary Americans in the driver's seat for reform. Because it gives them a choice between a public option, which people over 65 have enjoyed for a long time in this country, and what they already have. The mantra is, if you like what you have, you can keep it. That's very important, because the fact is that 80% of Americans, would somebody get this guy out of here. He's just a big pain in the butt. No, really, really, you're a jerk. Can't you just... No, it never happens. Only in Portland. So here's the problem with oh, maybe he works for Cigna? Maybe he does. Maybe he does.
McKenna, Aldridge, and Long. They represent Cigna. It's on their website.
They
reconcile that.
Because I don't do any work for them. Wait a minute. Wait a second. Hold on. Wait a minute. Look, if I were coming to give a political speech, you guys, hecklers are fine. It really is true. I don't mind being heckled, but there are a couple of hundred people in this room who have given up their lunch hour to hear this and get books signed. I think you ought to have respect for these people, because if you don't have respect for these people, then how are you expect to get anything done? No. Thank you. Sorry. So here's the deal with Obama's plan, and the reason I like it. What has killed healthcare reform for the last 3 times we've tried to do it is fears about what you may have. The truth is that 80% of Americans have health insurance. And of those 80%, about 80% have pretty good health insurance. It may be too expensive, but they get good health care. So 80 times 80 is 64, right? Or 0.8 times 80 is 64. 64% always beats 34% in a democracy. And the way that this, and some of you here are old enough to remember Harry and Louise, who I might add just endorsed universal health care last week. I thought that was a big deal. But the problem is that what the attack on health care reform has always been, what if you lose what you already have? Healthcare is like Congress. Everybody hates Congress, but they always reelect their Congresspeople because they like them as people. Well, people don't like the healthcare system because it's expensive, but they like their doctors and they like their own healthcare if they have decent insurance, and 65% of Americans do. So what Obama did is be the first person who's really pushed this, who understood this. In order to have reform, you can't just do the reform for the 20% with no insurance. It has to be about everybody. And the argument is now, especially in these difficult economic times, you may have health insurance, but over the last 15 years, you have experienced the fear that you'll lose your job and therefore your health insurance. You have experienced neighbors who have had their health care taken away because they've become ill and the health insurance company knows they can make more money if they don't take care of you. People who've been denied health insurance because they have pre-existing conditions. And so what Obama has promised is not a single payer or a private health care system or something for everybody. What he's promised is you get to make the choice. That is a very powerful issue. When it becomes not over an argument, not over this system or that system, which half the people in the country can't understand anyway, if not more, when it becomes an argument about taking choices away from politicians and the health insurance business and bureaucrats and giving them to the American people, it becomes a very powerful argument. And that is what Obama's argument is. If you like what you have, you can keep it. We're not going to threaten people who work for Microsoft, where I was in one of the stops I made yesterday. They love their insurance.